Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. We begin in British Columbia, where a First Nation says they have identified dozens of unmarked graves near the site of a former residential school. And a warning, the details may be disturbing to some viewers.
Unmarked children's graves. Shallow graves. Only large enough for the young bodies to lay in the fetal position.
The unmarked graves were found near the site of the former St. Augustine's residential school, which operated from 1904 to 1975. Archaeologists working with the First Nation say the number is likely conservative, considering the land around the former school has been disturbed by development. We'll bring you more on this story as it develops. The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors and others who might need support. That number is 1-866-925-4419. The discovery of a woman's remains along the Red River has many in Winnipeg's North End on edge. Police have not yet identified the woman, but one missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and two-spirit activist is certain that she's Indigenous. APTN's Leanne Sanders has more.
I feel alone, lost, a lot of thoughts. And I feel for the families that are also wondering if it's their loved one.
Sue Caribou says people who live in her North End community are expressing fear, anger, and fresh grief at the discovery of a woman's partial remains along the Red River in South Point, Douglas. Caribou says it reopens old wounds. Her niece Tanya Nipanak disappeared in 2011, and her remains have never been found.
When they find bodies in a river and at landfills, I wonder myself if it's our loved one, a friend of mine's loved one, and I'm grieving because it's been such a roller coaster.
Investigators are still conducting interviews and looking for any video surveillance that may help. Even though police haven't determined her ethnicity, Caribou says the woman still needs to be honored. A gathering was held in the community last night to offer support.
I live on Main Street, and I always tell my friends and anybody that I see, don't be by yourself. Don't walk alone. It's very dangerous out there.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Recent deaths in the city of Winnipeg came up at the United Nations. First Nations leaders are in New York City attending the UN's Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. The Assembly of First Nations hosted a press conference where chiefs and community leaders asked the international community to do more about the issue of murdered and missing people in Canada.
Right now, currently, in Canada, we do have the MMIW inquiry from 2019 and the 231 calls to justice that need to be implemented because we continue to see an increase of our Indigenous women being murdered, especially the latest case, Linda Beardy in Winnipeg, who was just recently found in a landfill. We are not trash. We are not garbage. We deserve to be valued. Traditionally, our women held high respect in our communities. And is that colonial violence that came here, that colonial mindset that came here and, put us to the lowest of the hierarchy.
Nunavut RCMP say they're investigating the case of Amira and Nadia Gill at the request of Nunavut Tungavik Inc., or NTI as it's also known. NTI gave the twins Inuit status, and with that, they received thousands of dollars in scholarships and bursaries intended for Indigenous students. As questions swirl about their status, NTI said the Gill Sisters have until May 11th to prove that they are Inuit, or they'll be taken off the Inuit enrollment list. Inspire did not agree to an interview but told APTN a scholarship for an undisclosed amount was awarded to Amira Gill because of her NTI enrollment. For much more on the Gill Sisters, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. Officials are juggling responsibility over an access road leading to the Atikamekw community of Manawan in Quebec, where dozens of people have been killed in car accidents. The feds say it's the province's responsibility. The province says it's on the forestry ministry, and forestry isn't saying anything. Here's the story by Lindsay Richardson and Shushan back on.
This road is the only way in and the only way out for the Atikamekw community of Manawan, 87 kilometers from the nearest municipality, St. Michel-des-Saints. While it's technically called Manawan Road, those who use it know there are dangers far out of their control.
C'est pas sécuritaire cette route-là, avec les courbes, avec les pentes, surtout quand il pleut puis qu'il y a le verglas, c'est dangereux.
Au niveau de la sécurité des membres de Manawan qui prennent cette route-là, les camions surchargés, c'est inquiétant.
By night, enveloped in darkness. By day, obstructed by dust clouds. Even traveling at low speeds, it's easy to lose control. It's killed several dozen community members directly, like in the incident of 1977, a car accident that killed 5 Manawan members. Or indirectly, like in early 2022, when 7-month-old Natea Chilton died.
Non, parce que vraiment mon bébé fait convulsion et c'est vraiment urgent. Mais j'ai dit, si vous ne voulez pas m'envoyer une ambulance, essayez de faire de quoi que je ramène mon bébé par moi-même.
This is the first time the Chiltons have spoken to media about their daughter's death. A year's passed, but the pain is still fresh. It took nearly 9 hours to transport Natea to a children's hospital in Montreal. A coroner's investigation concluded her death was accidental, a case of bacterial meningitis complicated by emergency care received too late.
Il y a un lien à faire entre le bébé qui est décédé au printemps 2022, mais aussi la situation de la route. Parce qu'au printemps 2022, la route était chaotique, il y avait plein de troupes et l'ambulance ne pouvait pas circuler assez convenablement pour pouvoir évacuer.
You'd think maintaining or repairing the road would be simple enough, but ministries and departments are juggling responsibility. Indigenous Services Canada says they provide operations and maintenance funding for the last 6 kilometers leading to Manawan. They say everything else is the responsibility of Transport Quebec, who in turn told APTN News they're only responsible for minimizing risk by plowing the road in winter or hosing it down during the summer.
C'est un chemin dont le ministère des Ressources naturelles et des Forêts est le propriétaire. Sauf que effectivement là, c'est le chemin Manawan. Le ministère des Transports et de la Mobilité durable en a l'entretien et on s'en occupe.
So we sent several emails to Quebec's Forestry Ministry, all of which went unanswered. The thing is, this is technically a logging road, which means trucks can travel with unrestricted heavy loads, usually over the speed limit. Jean-Roch Ottawa, former band council chief, says the community's been in discussions with Quebec about reclassifying the road for years, but feels the province's industry often outweighs Manawan's safety.
Pour limiter la charge des camions, parce qu'ils sont surchargés, le ministère il veut pas trop déclasser la classification du chemin, parce que l'industrie fait de la pression. Il dit si vous déclassez le chemin, mon industrie va mourir.
There's a meeting with the Transport Ministry upcoming in April, and though the community has raised the alarm for more than 50 years, Chief Sibi Flamand knows there are likely more to go.
C'est quand même plusieurs années, là, si je comprends bien la juridiction québécoise, mais aussi la juridiction sur la foresterie.
Meanwhile, grieving families like the Chiltons are left to deal with the emotional wreckage of losing a loved one.
Les médecins de Montréal, il y avait raison de l'amener en hélicoptère. Il y avait peut-être plus de chances qu'il nous disait de survivre.
As urgent as it may seem, there's still a long, winding road ahead until a safer trip. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Manawan, Quebec.
The water plant in Iqaluit may be up and running soon. Details on that and much more coming up after the break. Welcome back. Community members from northern BC First Nations gathered in Kitimat Village this week, advocating for more men's mental health and support services. Our Lee Wilson was there.
A Haisla Nation cultural group kicked off the gathering in support of men's wellness. Men from 4 northern BC First Nations traveled to Kitimat Village to take part. James Harry, an outreach worker in the downtown east side of Vancouver, helps people struggling on the streets find housing and mental health supports. He says men's mental health is often overlooked.
You know, a lot of us grew up hearing boys don't cry, boys don't show emotions, and the end result is we grew up with all this pressure, and we grow up messes, because they're holding all that stuff in.
The group marched through the community. They want to break old stereotypes that stigmatize men who show their feelings and encourage them to seek supports. Kyle Sam is from Dudes Club in Prince George, which provides Indigenous wellness support across the country. He says healthy men are essential to healthy communities.
Our men are an important part of the community, and you know, it's something where we need to take some of those roles back.
The men will gather for a 2-day workshop. Kyle Sam thinks there is a need for more events like this in communities across the country.
You know, we already do it when we're hunting, when we're fishing, when we're out on the land. You know, we're letting go of some stress. Those are very, very important parts of the way that men let go, and we've realized that, especially when you're in isolated communities or more northern communities.
This is Gordon McMillan's first time in his home territory. He's a 41-year-old Haisla Nation member who spent time in the childcare system and then struggled with his addictions in downtown Vancouver. He's happy to be welcomed home and walk on his healing journey with members from other nations.
This walk with James and everybody from all nations of northern BC and as far as right down to Vancouver is it really brings light to my eyes that that there is hope for us. We just need to reach out.
McMillan is grateful that he got connected with James Harry, an outreach worker who believed in him. He is hopeful that other nations could have success with their members.
I'm very glad for the Haisla Nation to have outreach work and that they're going to implement that on other nations so they have outreach workers, and to do that same walk that James does is it's very uplifting to all nations.
Harry says they're in communication with more nations, and they hope to be positive examples for communities.
And we're hoping to see other nations come on board where they can carry back that to their nations, to their kids, and it's okay to reach out.
Organizers hope to make the Men's Mental Health Gathering in northern BC an annual event. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat Village.
Thanks, Lee. A chief of a Mi'kmaq community says reconciliation starts with giving back the land. And the Nature Conservancy of Canada is doing just that, with an island off the north shore of Prince Edward Island. The island is 201 acres of salt marsh, wetlands, and forest, with 4 kilometers of beach shoreline. It's known as the Oltuns Island. It was purchased by the Nature Conservancy of Canada, or NCC, from a private owner. The NCC will collaborate with the Mi'kmaq to protect and conserve the ecologically sensitive island. And in 5 years, the island will be transferred to the Lennox Island and the Abegwet Mi'kmaq nations as a gesture of reconciliation.
There's a commitment to land back. And I've been told, and I've heard many, influential chiefs and elders, and knowledge keepers say, there can be no reconciliation without land back. So to me, we've done it. And it's extremely gratifying, to sit here and be a part of it.
Imperial Oil executives were on the hot seat in Ottawa today as they testified to a parliamentary committee about the Kearl oil sands mine spill in northern Alberta. A local Indigenous communities say Imperial Oil waited more than 9 months before telling them about the May 2022 tailings pond spill. Imperial Oil CEO Brad Corson told the Environmental Committee that the company did notify communities at the time of the spill, but apologized that this communication did not extend to Indigenous leadership. Even here, NDP MP Heather McPherson accused Imperial of hiding information.
So you talk about the fact that on May 19th you let them know. On May 19th, you said there was discolored water and vegetation. You never said that that was tailings, that that was toxic sludge that was come up.
The Iqaluit water treatment plant is expected to be back in operation next week after a year and a half of issues that have plagued the Nunavut capital. Fuel leaks contaminated the city's water supply in late 2021 and early 2022. The plant was shut down in February 2022 after the second contamination. The government of Nunavut gave the city the green light to bring the plant back online last month. But residents aren't out of the woods yet. A precautionary boil water order will be put in place once the plant resumes operations around April 25th. Kent Driscoll is with the city of Iqaluit.
The difference in this one is that it's going to be slightly longer because we're doing more testing than we usually do, and we're sending those tests to a southern lab for confirmation. So there's going to be a little disruption next week, but it's all worth it.
Good to see you, Kent. Barely recognized you, former reporter here with APTN News. Well, a new book published by the Métis Nation of Alberta is being called provocative by some. We'll tell you why after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Maya Lee Kelman sent in this beauty from a trip to Pakistan. This is from a ski resort atop a mountain at Malam Jaba Ski Resort in northern Pakistan. Doesn't look like a lot of skiing going on there. Our photo of the day is going global. If you have a great photo, send your pictures by email to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 10 for Halifax, 12 in Fredericton, +2 and cloudy in Kuujjuaq, snow and 1 above for Nain, 16 with showers in Montreal, 8 in Val-d'Or, 7 for Sault Ste. Marie, rain and 10 in North Bay, 3 with snow in Thunder Bay, flurries and -1 in Sioux Lookout, +4 in God's Lake, sunny and 3 above for Norway House. +1 with snow in Winnipeg, 2 above with snow in Dauphin. 0 with snow in Regina, cloudy and +1 for Saskatoon. Cloudy and 5 for Meadow Lake, La Ronge and Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, 10 for Peace River and Fort McMurray. 5 in Edmonton, 5 with snow for Lethbridge. 10 for Vancouver and Victoria, 14 in Kamloops. 9 in Prince George and Smithers, 7 in Dease Lake. -3 with snow in Old Crow, +5 for Whitehorse. 4 in Yellowknife, -2 in Norman Wells. -14 for Sax Harbor, snow and 8 below in Paulatuck. -3 in Arviette, 5 below for Chesterfield. -23 in Resolute, 6 below for Clyde River. A new book called The True Canadians, Forgotten Nevermore is now available. It details Métis history in Canada and was published by the Métis Nation of Alberta. APTN's Chris Stewart sat down with the book's co-author.
David Walenko and Patricia Russell are on a nationwide book tour to promote their book, The True Canadians, Forgotten Nevermore. Released in January, the book details important moments in Métis history with a focus on the Métis Nation of Alberta. David Walenko is the co-author. The authors attended a book signing at Audrey's Books in Edmonton Monday evening.
The book is actually the brainchild of the Métis Nation of Alberta's president, Audrey Poitras. And she wanted to have something to commemorate the fact that it's been just over 40 years since the Métis were recognized in the Constitution Act of 1982, which Pierre Trudeau and the Queen of England famously signed on Parliament Hill on that rainy morning. And that was considered to be a very, very huge juncture in the history of the Métis aspirations for nationhood and for their rights.
He says the title has caused some interesting discussions with readers.
Its title is provocative. It's called The True Canadians, and when we were in Winnipeg, some people were saying, well, why would you be the true Canadians? So it's provocative, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It's also the subtitle, Forgotten Nevermore, which suggests that the Métis no longer want to be the forgotten people as they were for many, many years after Louis Riel and the Battle of Batoche.
Walenko says there is a nationwide interest and audience for the book.
The sales are doing really well, yeah. We're going to be going actually all the way out to Halifax. We've been invited there to come. We're going to be in Toronto, and then all the way over to Vancouver, Victoria, and we're going to finish our tour up in Yellowknife.
Both authors will be at Owl's Nest Books in Calgary, Friday at 7 p.m. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Okay, time to head over to Ottawa now, where our Fraser Needham is standing by with a look at tonight's Nation to Nation.
The Tillings Pond leak from an oil sands mine has been going on for nearly a year. We'll talk to NDP MP Blake Desjardins about how the mess should be cleaned up. The United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues is taking place in New York this week. Minister of Northern Affairs Dan Vandel was there. He speaks to Nation about his role in the Canadian delegation. And Alyssa Carpenter was part of a youth delegation that presented at the UN Forum, and she talks to us about how Canada is failing to live up to TRC Call to Action 66. That's coming up right after the news.
Looks good. Thanks, Fraser. Nation to Nation is coming up right here after the news, which is right away, because we are all out of time for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For more on anything you've seen here, you can head on over to our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Stick around. Nation to Nation is up next. Prediction, the Leafs will win tonight. Have a great night.